Cowboys and Aliens is definitely something unique. Look, all films are high concept at their core, especially the big popcorn movies. I don't care what you call it. I don't care how you explain it away. You're taking an intrinsically ridiculous concept and then bringing it to the screen and adding reality to it. In the case of Cowboys and Aliens, we just went ahead and called it Cowboys and Aliens. We didn't try to come up with some sophisticated name to bury what it is. And that's kind of a new wave of approach, is to, boom, it's there, it's snappy, you're curious, you don't know if it's a comedy, if it's silly, if it's, and when we were considering should we change the name, because that was the name on the graphic novel, I said to Harrison Ford, I say, people are kind of giving us some shit about the name. Some people love it, but some people really are confused or offended by it. I said, should we change the name? And he thought for a second, he went, well, what the hell else would you call it? The alien aspect of Cowboys and Aliens is what allowed us to make a Western on the scale of the old Westerns. In recent times, you have great Westerns like True Grit or Unforgiven, but those are films that are done, those are smaller films that reach out to a larger audience because of their quality and how well they were accomplished. But in the old days, Westerns were the action film, they were the popcorn film of that era. And by having Cowboys and Aliens, sci-fi is the popcorn film of this era. So by having the scope of a sci-fi film, but the genre of a Western, gives it a certain classic look and feel, ironically. And so our generation now is getting an opportunity through a film like Cowboys and Aliens to make a statement about our generation. You deal with the classic archetypes, you deal with the classic storylines, and you twist it. And you use the movie stars of your era to retell the stories that have been told decade after decade. And as a filmmaker, it's a tremendous, I appreciate the opportunity so much. I think what's nice about, I think that the statement that this one ultimately embraces is by having an extraterrestrial force, you're no longer coming to terms with the complexity of the xenophobia that was related by the first half of the last century. Not to get too heady about the whole thing, the Native Americans were not viewed as a culture that the Europeans understood. They were being painted as this mysterious evil force. And as each generation developed and we learned more about Native American culture, with the Searchers, Cheyenne Autumn, Dances with Wolves, we began to understand that they were actually the underdogs in many situations. And the classic black and white Western of good and evil was outdated. When you have an extraterrestrial threat, you're creating an enemy, and so you can go back on all of the old Western tropes from a simpler time without being ignorant to the cultural impact of it, because you can create an evil as deeply black as you want. And to do that, we drew from the old masters of the horror sci-fi genre. When you look at, Alien and Aliens and Predator, and I wouldn't even limit it to that. I would look at Jaws, and I would look at all of the films in that pre-CG, hybrid horror era, where you were using the imagination of the audience as your most powerful special effect. Technically, it was much more difficult than, let's say, Iron Man, where we were shooting essentially plates of a background and having some explosions, but then having CG characters dealing with one another, fighting, talking, flying. In this, we had to actually create interactions between men on horseback, in some cases throwing ropes, shooting, getting attacked and knocked over. All of those things had to occur in real plates and be planned ahead of time, and then ILM would then add the aliens into it. So getting the aliens photo real in daylight, we're able to do that now. It's a classic story, whether it's Magnificent Seven, Seven Samurai. It's the bandit horde that has to be held off by the weird collection of warriors and civilians. And it's a throwback to the old style of storytelling using extremely modern techniques.